do have skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amanda Hill will lead the next witness, Annasophia Calman, who has a support person with her.
Thank you, Mr. Mount. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would normally call you Ms. Calman, but is it okay if I call you Anna?
Yes.
Now, Anna, you've got a written statement there with your name on it.
Can I intervene just as we start to ask you, and I am required to do this by the Inquiries Act, do you solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence you will give before this Commission will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Hill.
Anna, you've seen your statement and it's got your name at the end of it. And that's been signed. Is everything in that statement true?
True.
Okay. And we're going to use a couple of pages from your records today, which have just been sent to the Commissioners a little while ago. And you've got a copy of those there, don't you?
I do.
Okay. And they're from your child welfare records, aren't they?
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So, your name's Annasophia Calman, but you had a different name when you were born, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to tell me about your family, Anna? Take your time.
My real name actually is Margaret Ross. We had a very, very poor upbringing. Sorry to be like this.
It's okay, Anna, you take your time.
My mother couldn't carry 7 of us children around due to her being beaten up. And that's how we were brought up as well, being beaten up by the same man that beat my mother up. So she couldn't run away with us. We had to stay with him. But the SIPs knew about this, the State Board knew about it. I just can't understand why they couldn't take us away from the man that did this to us, tormented us.
And in your written statement, Anna, you talked about that man being your father, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And you talked a bit about what a home was like and things like food. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Yes. At the time our mother took off, we were children, if you remember the program called the Bangladesh People. That's how we lived. Nothing in our cupboards, beaten by our father while he was drunk. No, and the only people that were, and we'd have to be eating out of rubbish bins to survive.
And at paragraph 8 of your statement, you talked about some sexual abuse at home too, didn't you? And you can just talk about what you remember if that's easier for you, Anna.
In our home there was a lot of abuse. I was one of the rape victims by my brother and my mother's stepbrother. We had the shield taken away from us. We didn't know who to trust. Do we trust the people that victimise us, or do we trust the person like myself? To me, I never found out to be who I was. I never found out what it was like to be a woman because of me being raped.
Anna, how old were you when your mum left?
My mum was 10 when she left us.
So you were 10 when your mum left?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I can see from your statement that you've written, or you said there that the Child Welfare wrote a notification about you in May 1961. So you would have only been about 4 then, because you were born in 1957, eh?
That's correct.
Yeah, so you're 3.5 when
Yes.
Child Welfare came to your house? But you've said in your statement that nothing happened, that you were left at home?
The State Board did nothing for us. Just left us there to defend for ourselves.
And Anna, we've got a couple of pages from your child welfare file here, and you've seen these, and I'll just help you a bit here. So the first page of those records is about your family, and that's from June 1967. So just as you're 9 years old, and I can see that your school headmaster told Child Welfare that people were kinder to dumb animals than parents were to your children, than your parents were to you. What do you think about that?
It's true. They tried to get protection for us, but they weren't there for us. Still left us in the rubble. So we didn't know who we really were, where to get our next feed from, and who to protect us.
And so there's another document from your records, and it's a year later, isn't it? The second page, so it's from August 1968. This is it's written by a nurse in Hawera. Do you remember living in Hawera?
Yes,
Yeah? And you were going to Meremere School, do you remember?
yes,
And the note from your record says that you and your brothers and sisters always seemed to be starving, and that the school had given you some meals. Do you remember that?
yes.
Yeah. What was school like around then?
I really don't know, because I don't know how to read and write. I never knew how to read and write until I actually went to Polytechnic.
Yeah.
You ask me to spell something and I'll tell you to go and you jump, because I don't know how to do it. And I've been taught how to break things up to learn to say the word properly.
So you taught yourself as an adult, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So I can see, and you can see from your own records, that another month after the school talks about how you guys aren't getting enough to eat, the nurse again calls Child Welfare and says you don't have enough food or clothing, and that they're concerned about mental cruelty. Do you want to talk to me a bit about how your dad talked to you or treated you?
My dad was a violent man. What I couldn't understand is why didn't we get put into protection? My dad used to throw me up against the fire hearth. I'll never forget it. I can still picture him doing it to me. Sis was told about it, and they still didn't take us away from him. We had to put up with the violence of what he did to me and my siblings.
So we know from your records that the Child Welfare did make a complaint, because that's in your statement at paragraph 10, but they left you at home.
Could you repeat that again, please?
That's right. So at paragraph 10 of your written statement, and you talked about this before, that you and your family came to the notice of Child Welfare, and there was a complaint that you were living in what's called a detrimental environment.
That's correct.
Yeah. But you stayed there, eh?
because we had nowhere else to go.
And Anna, the next page from your records. Is from 1969, so a couple of years later since that first complaint. And this is a note from Hawera School about how you and your brothers and sisters just had a bit of bread for lunch. Do you remember that? So this is the document with number 3 in the corner.
We had no food in our house. We were pinching off children in the schools, and the headmaster knew about it.
And on that same page it talks about your dad drinking all of his wages, drinking all the money. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so in your written statement at paragraph 13 you talk about another social welfare complaint and being made a state ward and being taken away from home. Can you tell me about being taken away? Do you remember?
We became state ward when our mum, they wouldn't let us go back to our mum. So we went to court, and that's when the state ward became involved and took us away from our dad. We were like confused, me and my siblings. We all went separate ways, didn't know where we were going, we were all taken away from each other. It split us up completely.
And so where did you go?
I went to a Catholic convent down south called Nazareth House.
So you went down to Christchurch.
Yes.
And you've talked a bit in your statement about Nazareth House. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
We were, myself and my 3 other siblings were sent to Nazareth House. My brother was sent to St Horswell. We came together during school time. At the time, what the nuns did to us is exactly what my father did to us. Cruelty.
So you talked about what would happen in school at Nazareth House. And at paragraph 15 of your statement, you talked about what the nuns would do in class. Can you tell me about that?
The nuns would whack our knuckles if we didn't do as we were told, or they'll lift your skirt up and whack your thigh. Now that brought back memories of what our dad did to us.
What do you remember about going to school at Nazareth House?
We had a school built into the building of Nazareth House, and there we didn't know how to, between me and myself and my 3 siblings, we didn't know how to read nor write. And some of us still can't do it today.
And in paragraph 16 of your statement, you talked about running away from Nazareth House and talking to the police. Can you tell me about that?
The day that I climbed out the fire escape window was the day that I got touched by a nun. That freaked me out. It's bad enough a man did it to me, now a nun does it to me.
And I think that was the second time you ran away. Was it? Because there's a...
And at that time I ran away.
Yeah?
I told the cops I did not want to go back there because I had felt like I'd been touched.
Okay. And what happened after that?
And then they took us away, and then I was sent to Waitara.
Okay. Because in your written statement, you talked about telling one of the other nuns about being touched. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah? What happened?
I got slapped because they said I was lying.
So we want... There's a document from your records that you'll see in front of you, and it's a report on you and your brothers and sisters, or 4 of you, which says that you'd been at Nazareth House for a couple of years. Can you see that one there? It's got a 4 up in the corner for you.
4 in the corner.
Yeah. And it says that you're placid and well behaved, but you've not made very good progress at school. Although I know that there's big blacked out bits in it, isn't there? So it's hard to read. And it says that you and your sisters are showing signs of becoming institutionalised. What do you think about that?
It's one of the worst places to be, especially in a nunnery, to be institutionalised. Both me and my 3 siblings.
Because there were 7 of you all together, weren't there, your brothers and sisters? So there were 4 of you
Yes.
at Nazareth House.
Yes.
And I know from your statement, you talk about going to another foster placement in January 1972, and that's at paragraph 23 of your written statement. And because we're not using their names, we're talking about them as the Waitara foster home, aren't we? Or Mr. and Mrs. L.
I was transferred from the nunnery and flown up to the North Island, from the South Island to the North Island to live with the Waitara whānau.
And in your statement, you talked about some things that happened there. Can you tell me what the foster father was like?
He was very abusive, pulled my hair, used the jug cord on me. And when I told the stake here, they didn't believe me. Who am I supposed to believe if I'm going to tell my story to them?
And in your written statement, you talked about some sexual abuse in that home.
While living with the Waitara whānau, I was abused by somebody in that house. I was totally raped 3 times in that house.
Did you tell anyone about it?
Yes, I told the stake here.
And what happened?
And they said to me, you better be telling the truth if we have to ask these people questions. I said, I'm telling the truth. I started to get angry with the lady. Then they asked the Waitara people, this girl is saying that so-and-so here has raped this girl. And I just said, then they tried to say that I was lying. I said, I'm not lying. Why would I be saying these things? And why was this thing happening on my bed?
And you talked about being hit with the jug cord by the foster father. How often would those sorts of things happen?
Once.
Yeah. And the next page from your records that's in front of you, so it's got a little 5 up in the corner. And that's from 10 November 1972. And this is, you got it there? Yeah. And this is a long note written by your social worker. And it actually says that you told her about being hit with the jug cord and having your hair pulled, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it says, and the social worker wrote, I warned Margaret that she must tell me the truth as I was taking her back to Mrs. L, and she would have to repeat these things in front of her. And you were willing to do that, weren't you?
Yes.
And so the note that the social worker wrote talks about taking you back there and you saying the same things again,
Yes.
and that you showed your social worker a big bruise on your thigh.
Yes.
And the note says that the social worker wrote that the foster mother agreed that her husband had hit you with a jug cord,
Yes.
and that she told her that they weren't allowed to hit state wards and took you away. Is that right?
That's correct.
Did anybody ever talk to you about that again?
The school at Waitara.
Yeah. But do you know if anything else happened after that with the Waitara whānau?
I got taken away from them.
Yeah, okay. So, after you left there, where did you go?
Opanaki.
So that's at paragraph 29 of your written statement. You went there in August 1973. So we've called them Mr. and Mrs. E, but I think today we'll call them the Opanaki family, eh?
Correct.
Yeah. And your records say that you stayed there for about 1.5 years. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Do you want to talk to me about the foster dad there?
He raped me too. He took me to his room and raped me. I meant to be looked after by him, but now I got raped.
Did anyone know about it?
The state care knew about it.
So you said in your statement that the foster mother found out about it and she didn't want you living there anymore. Is that right?
That's correct.
And while you were living there, you got pregnant, didn't you?
I didn't get pregnant by the Opanaki man.
To someone else, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. And at paragraph 33 of your statement, you talked about adopting the baby out. Do you remember what happened?
I don't remember adopting him out.
Yeah.
I remembered I found out I was pregnant, and then I overheard the state ward telling the Opanaki family that I'm going to have the baby taken from me. I started to flip out. So I was taken into Hawera Hospital to have my baby. I was made to travel back with him in the ambulance. I asked the man in the ambulance, what's the baby doing? Whose is the other baby? And he said, it's yours. And I said, well, what's it doing here? I'm not supposed to look at him. We got him back to Opanaki, both myself and the baby, and I was made to breastfeed my baby.
And then what happened?
2 days later, he was gone.
And there's a page from your records, Anna, and it's got a little 6 in the corner for you. And there's a note about your baby being adopted and that you came back together to Opanaki. And you can see there, that's at the bottom of that page from July 1974. There's an instruction to the social worker. Would you please see the baby at Opunake and let me know how Māori it looks? Can you see that?
Yep.
What do you think about that?
It's very racism because he was just a baby.
After you left the Opunake family, where did you go?
I was sent back by my dad where I didn't really want to go. And then I ended up in a relationship.
What was your dad like by that time?
Still the same. Still drinking.
Because you were still under child welfare, weren't you?
That's correct.
Do you remember the social worker visiting you?
Yes.
Yeah. And did they meet your dad?
Yes.
And you talked about starting to live with the man you met. Yeah. And I can see in your records it talks about you living with him and his mother.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's at paragraph 37 of your statement. So you were 17 when you had another baby, weren't you?
Yes, I had a little girl.
And so, can you tell me a bit about what life was like for you then?
When I met up with my partner, he became very abusive like my father did. But he was totally worse than my father. And my children saw the abuse I was going through. But the state ward knew all about it. Because I was battered and bruised, that nothing got done to save my life. My kids would have been left without a mummy.
And there's another page from your records, Anna. It's got a 7 in the corner for you. And that talks about you going in to visit your social worker with 2 black eyes and a big lump on your face, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it talks about how that had been done by your partner. And it says there that you were talked about the care you should expect from him, because it looked like you thought being beaten up was inevitable. Well, it was just always going to happen, I guess is another way of putting it. Do you remember what happened about that? Do you remember what social welfare did?
They did nothing. They didn't even press charges.
And it says in that record there that they checked you'd been to a doctor. And there's nothing else there, is there?
No.
So you were still living with him when child welfare discharged you, weren't you?
That's correct.
And the last document in that pile from your records, it's got a little 8 in the corner. That talks about how you were pregnant, doesn't it? And how they're going to see how you care for your baby and decide whether to discharge you.
Yes,
From
I
being
was
a
pregnant with my 3rd child.
Yeah. And that record says, and it's your social worker writing, as far as I can see, she is a waste of our time. She's changed addresses, and I gather she's back living with her de facto.
That's correct.
And you were discharged a little while after that, weren't you?
Yep.
So, you talked in your statement about the time after social welfare care. What was life like?
After I was discharged from from the state care. They were coming around checking on me after I had left to see if I was coping with my 4 other children. I coped really well. I felt that if I could treat my children right, why couldn't I be treated right? And then I left this relationship and met up with a lovely man who I love so much and helped me on my journey to get to where I am today.
You've talked a little bit about the effect of your childhood on you in your written statement. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
My childhood.
About how you think it affected you as an adult?
My childhood has been affected due to being raped. When I was raped at a younger age, I felt there was no adult part of me inside me. My adulthood is actually starting now. I don't remember my age, I do now. And just everything was just taken. I don't know who I really am.
And Anna, in your written statement, at paragraph 44, you talked about changing your name to Annasophia. Do you know why? Can you tell us why you did that?
Yes. I changed my name to Annasophia because of being abused under my real name was enough to put a record on me. I'm not going to be discriminated with the name I got today. I love my name. Annasophia Calman.
And that last name's your husband's? Calman's your
correct.
husband's name, yeah. And you've talked a little bit about how your mental health has been over the years. Do you want to talk to me a bit about that?
I've been placed on medication due to post-traumatic stress disorder. I thought I was going mental, but I was told by my doctor, no, it's due to the pain I've been going through out my life.
And
I'm under counselling as well. I've got a lovely counsellor, she's beautiful. I forgot to tell her I was coming here today.
you're going to have quite a story when you get home. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about before I see if there's anything else you want to say is about your legal claim. And you've said that you instructed Cooper Legal about a legal claim against the Ministry of Social Development. And that's right, isn't it?
That's correct.
In the very last paragraph of your written statement, you've said there that your claim documents were sent to the Ministry on 4 August 2015 and you haven't heard anything back. Is that right?
That's correct.
Anna, we talked a little earlier about education and your reading and writing. Do you want to talk about how you learnt to read and write and when? When did you learn?
I learned to read and write when I first went to Polytechnic. I was taught how to break down words and how to put it together and how to say it together. The only thing I really wanted to learn was maths. Well, I didn't know anything about maths until I met the man I'm with today. Because he's a carpet layer, you got to know the meters, everything. So I look at my husband and think, oh my golly gosh, I wouldn't want to be a carpet layer. I'm still trying to mend what I've got to do today. But he wishes me all the best on my journey and to do the thing at Polytechnic and how to read. I never, like last year, I got my first degree in looking after elderly people. I love looking after elderly people.
So you care for other people now?
I do. The elderly people are like my parents that I didn't have in my life before.
And I know that where you were talking earlier about your whānau. Is there anything you want to say about how you get along with your family and your own children?
After I had done my book, and then went to one of my visiting days with one of our commissioners that's sitting here with us, I rang up to my siblings. It's something I wouldn't want anybody to go through, because I lost all my siblings. I never thought we could come together, but we didn't. I encourage my siblings to do what I'm doing, but not to push it. Be honest with yourself and carry on with yourself. Like, I spoke to my sister this morning, she was heartbroken. So it's very hard to see what I'm doing and for them to do the same.
And you talked to me a bit about your children and your grandchildren.
Last night I went to visit my grandchildren and my 6th grade grandchildren. My daughter, who's also a social worker, praise her, she's also taking on two of my grandchildren that were placed into SIPs. She's taken on that role model now of being the mother to these 2 grandchildren. She's doing a wonderful job. I just wish we had state people like her. She's also doing psychology work to help younger people out there today. And we've never been so close until I spoke to one of them on the phone today, my son.
Anna, is there anything else that you want to say that we haven't talked about or that is important to you?
I want to read the story that my daughter sent me.
Yep. So just for the Commissioner's knowledge, Anna's daughter has sent her a message and she'd like to read it. It's just on her phone.
When I find it. To my dearest mother, I can imagine how hard today will be for you. After all these years, you are able to tell your story about the truth of what happened to you and stay clear and hold those accountable to the drama that you have been through and care. And several your daily having in you as a person. I pray today will bring you a voice, some healing, tears of joy, and some relief. I know that no amount of kōrero will fully heal what no child should ever go through, experience to endure while in the care of others or welfare care. But this will show them, the Royal Commissioner State Care, and your perpetrators, how strong you are today. Thank you for speaking, Mum.
And I don't have any more questions for you. Some other people might want to talk, so you just stay where you are and just take a minute, okay? You've done so well.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Ms. McKechnie.
Sir, Mrs. Calman, my name is Sally, and I'm here on behalf of the bishops and congregational leaders of the Catholic Church and I'd like to acknowledge your evidence on their behalf today, and thank you for your courage in speaking to us. Representatives of the Catholic Church of Te Raupu Tautoku are here, Mrs. Calman, and they've heard what you had to say. They've listened very carefully, and on their behalf, I thank you for your courage. The current leadership of the Sisters of Nazareth were not aware of what had happened to you in St Joseph's Orphanage until they saw your evidence, and they're very concerned to hear what has happened to you. They hope they can meet with you and talk to you about how to help with your healing. I've written to Amanda about that, and she'll talk to you about that when you're ready. That will not be today, I'm sure, but when you are ready, the Sisters of Nazareth would like to speak to you about how they can help. So thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you, Ms. McKegney. Colleagues, are there any of you that wish to ask any questions? No, there aren't. I want to thank you for your evidence. It is very difficult to speak in public about these things, but your bravery is remarkable, and we're all very grateful to have what you have said to the Royal Commission now in front of us on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps if we could have another short adjournment before the next witness.
Thank you.